I'm here with lead content designer Joel Bylos and lead designer Martin Brusgaard to talk about The Secret World, which is the upcoming MMORPG from Funcom. And I guess I'm kind of wondering, guys, one of the most interesting things about this whole game is that you're basically creating decks of abilities. It's not the same normal class-based system. Like, how are you going to base your missions around them? Are you going to basically be saying to the players, we want you to build these specific decks to deal with these monsters?
No, I think that when players... So I mean, yes, in certain areas, people will need to have the correct effects to be optimal. I think that's the important phrase to point out. In solo play especially, to be optimal, you want to have a certain build. But I mean, you can still get through things just by modifying your current build slightly. And that's kind of the important thing for us. We want players to be able to progress in the style they like to play. We don't want to force them to have to change out all the time in the solo play. But of course, you won't be as optimal if you don't. So it's kind of this balance between like playing the way you want to play, but also, you know, tweaking yourself as you go.
The other thing I find is you introduce individual areas, right? So you had the creepy Lovecraftian New England town. This time around, you're showing out the Solomon Island. How exactly are you getting to these different locations? Like, how does the travel work?
So we have obviously several forms of travel. We have obviously the real world travel stuff, which we can use to get around, you know, as we showed you, the helicopter in the demonstration. But we also have a thing called Agartha. Agartha is based on the myth of Hollow Earth, where players can actually go beneath the earth. And in Agartha, it's like the Ways from the Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time, if you've read those books. It's kind of like, you know, players can travel from point to point on the earth very quickly by running down short stretches of corridor, for example, and arriving, you know, thousands of miles away.
And I'm kind of curious, like, Solomon Island's very dark and rainy, Lovecraftian area very foggy and rainy. Are we going to see any, like, you know, nicer areas, maybe bright and sunny?
Yeah, absolutely. We have tons of different areas in the game, and they're all really different. I mean, we showed a little bit of Egypt. That's sunny. We also shown Wallachia, or Transylvania. So we have a lot of different areas in the game that really look different and play really different as well. I mean, every single location has its what's the word? Atmosphere and creatures, and the population there is really, really different. So it's all about creating different, nice, interesting areas all around in the world.
And getting back to the whole deck concept, I'm kind of curious, like, what are some of the most... can you give me an example of a really interesting build that you saw someone just kind of come up with?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting to see. Like, I had a build that was like a shotgun guy, and he had a blast attack that could knock people down, right? But then on the other side of the skill wheel, there was an ability that would take advantage of a knockdown to do triple damage on a fire attack. So I took that and combined those two abilities. So then, you know, I was knocking stuff down, and then, you know, hitting it with the fire attack while it was down to get triple damage. So it turned me into a bit of a badass DPSer. And it's that kind of synergy all across the skill wheel that sort of you build classes that way. You know, you can do things like, you know, when somebody is set on fire, for example, when you hit them with a certain ability, they become stunned as well. So we have all these synergies and interplays among the abilities and the weapon types.
Yeah, and there's like when you use a skill on a target, you can put that in a certain state, and other players or even yourself with different abilities can exploit that state for an additional effect. We also have synergies that let you modify, for instance, all cone damage now knocks people down, or all fire attack now inflicts a dot and stuff like that. So there's tons of synergy around in the skills.
Do you find that people are creating characters that could almost be considered like all-rounders? They're good at everything just because they know how to manipulate the deck so well?
I mean, people certainly try to do that, but that's one of the kind of advantages of our system is that, like, when you focus yourself into something, it means you have to sort of let go of other things. So, for example, if I focused very hard on DPS, then I might have to not take extra health. So it's kind of impossible in our system to be like, you know, a guy who has 50,000 health and 50,000 DPS. You have to choose.
Yeah, we can't have a game where everybody's running around as the tank mage priest. You start off fairly general, and then you move to a more specified role. You
know, Age of Conan was known for having a bit of a troubled time, despite being a very attractive MMORPG. Like, what were some of the things that you learned from that experience that you don't want to repeat with The Secret World?
Oh, tons of things. Polish is very important. You know, I think in terms of like creation of the content, we learned how to layer it properly, so that we're a lot more even. I guess you would say that the experience of Conan at launch, there was a lot of polish on the early parts of the game and not a lot of polish on the end parts of the game. In the Secret World, we're actually trying to approach everything at the same time, so we keep everything sort of polished to the same level all the way through the game. So when players play, they won't feel this sort of betrayal that they felt in Conan when they left Tortage. They won't feel that in the Secret World. The game is fully voiced from start to finish. That was another mistake we made on Conan. We only had 20 levels of voiceover. Now the entire game is voiced in the Secret World, and when we're not. I guess we're not creating a lot of the inconsistencies that we created in Conan. We don't want to do that with the Secret World, so it's a much more even game.
Yeah, and some players also complained about the lack of feeling that they progressed in the game, like their own character progressed, and we're addressing that as well. Like we've been talking about progression now in the two different forms, both the horizontal and the vertical progression, and really giving players a feeling of becoming stronger and better.
What I'm also kind of wondering about is one of the major things that Rift kind of introduced was that you have these world events that will draw players in just, at random. Have you kind of been learning from that, and do you want to kind of integrate that into the Secret World?
Absolutely, we do have similar events. They're not quite as epic as Rifts, I would say, but we have our own interesting events, and one of the things that we're really focused on is making sure that players can actually play together with no barriers all the time. So we really want people to be sort of running around. We don't want this feeling that a lot of MMOs have where you're rushing to endgame because that's where the game begins, right? And so we hope that this will encourage players to be more altruistic as they play, because there's no reason to just ignore everybody around you to get to the top level before you start talking to people. In our game, we want people cooperating from day one, want people working together, and we have events in the world that will encourage that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Whenever something happens in the game, we want players to join up and play together. And we have mechanics in the game that allows players to hook up, play and face all the content together. And this is a really important part. I mean, we don't want players to play a solo MMO. We want them to play together. You are able to solo if you want to do that, but we want players to group up and help each other.
What do you see as kind of like the end game for someone who ends up capping out and everything? Like, what do you want them to be doing?
I mean, there's the crafting system. There's so much repeatable content in our game that people can keep playing and enjoy. I would hope that people are theorizing and digging into the myths and legends, trying to sort of find out more of the story. We have some story-based mechanics that we're not talking about, but we will get to that eventually, and players will be. They'll have a lot of options there in terms of exploring the story and finding out more information, and I think it will take them a very long time to cap out any of that stuff. In addition, there are things we're doing that include player-created content, but we're not going to talk about that yet either. And on top of that, there's the Secret War, which goes on all the time, and Martin can give you probably more info on the Secret War.
Yeah, I mean the players, when they're facing the PvE content, they can team up together and face this tide of the rising darkness together. But in PvP, the gloves come off, and we have different PvP mechanics and PvP games that the players can play. I mean, but at the end game as well, I mean, we want players to get better items, for instance. You get more specialized. Even maybe you've been playing as a healer for a long time, and now you want to play as a tank. Then you start training the tank abilities, but also you need to get the tank gear. So it's that aspect as well.
In my opinion, MMORPG market is really changing. Are you concerned, especially given that you have some really strong competition, that there might be kind of a fatigue setting in, and that people might be looking for something a little different?
Isn't that our advantage? I think that we are a little different, so I think that's kind of our advantage to that, I guess. I think that people are, at least from all the people I know who are pretty hardcore, people are tired of sort of the level grind, and people are tired of this. They want to pick up a game where they can play and just enjoy themselves and have fun with other people, and the focus of this game is really on having a good time with other people, not spending your time on a virtual treadmill. That's kind of what we want to avoid. So yeah.
I really feel like or hope at least, that players will think that the Secret World is a fresh, new, nice-looking game that they can have lots of fun with, and I think we're getting there, absolutely.
Thanks a lot, Joel and Martin. Secret World, hopefully we'll see it soon. So good luck, and thank you very much.